Hello history lovers and welcome back to the channel. My name is Hannah and if you're new here, welcome to the channel. And today we are going to explore all of the Tudor princes. Now the people on this list are the male descendants of King Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, the first Tudor monarchs, and are therefore males who have a claim to the English throne and have English royal blood, even if they are not necessarily titled as or technically are princes. One caveat is that I won't be including illegitimate children, so people like Henry Fitzroy unfortunately have not made the list, as these are all legitimate male heirs. The other caveat that I have placed on this video is that everyone on this list was born before the death of the last Tudor monarch, Queen Elizabeth I, on the 24th of March 1603. I'm going to try and make this list as logical as possible. In the last episode I looked at the sons of King Henry VII and Queen Elizabeth of York, as well as the sons of King Henry VIII. Today I will be looking at the descendants of Henry and Elizabeth's eldest daughter, Margaret Tudor, Queen of Scotland. James V. James, the third son of King James IV and Margaret Tudor, was born on the 10th of April 1512 at Linlithgow Palace. James was the only legitimate child of James IV to survive infancy. He inherited the title Duke of Rothesay. His brothers James, Duke of Rothesay, and Arthur Stewart, Duke of Rothesay, and Alexander Stewart nearly made the list. And then I changed my mind because they all died young and there's not really much on them. Ascending to the throne at just 17 months old, after his father's death at the Battle of Flodden in September 1513, James was crowned at Stirling Castle in September. With his mother Margaret Tudor initially accepted as regent per James IV's will, the nobility supported her as long as she remained a widow.
Big blown sack of drama say what?
However, her decision to marry Archibald Douglas, the Earl of Angus, in August 1514, faced opposition from the nobility who feared Douglas's influence. The opposition eventually led to Margaret's removal as regent by the Privy Council.
You serious?
Appointing James's second cousin, John, Duke of Albany, as her replacement. Albany had been born and raised in France, so he was very pro-French with his politics, unlike Margaret, the king's mother, who was very pro-English, as she was an English princess and her brother was the King of England. In 1515, Albany eventually arrived in Scotland. Despite his courteous treatment of Queen Margaret, he insisted that she surrender the care of James and his younger brother to the nobles. With some reluctance, Margaret complied. However, not long after, seemingly concerned for her safety, she discreetly departed Linlithgow for England. Her stay in England extended until the spring of 1517. In 1517, Queen Margaret made her return and Albany departed to go back to his home in France. In the later part of 1521, Albany returned to Scotland and this time garnered the support of Queen Margaret. She had become estranged from her husband, the Earl of Angus, upon discovering he was maintaining a mistress using her money.
The cheek, the nerve, the gall, the audacity and the gumption.
By 1524, Albany once again left for France. Serving as James's envoy and ambassador, he notably represented the king at the papal court in Rome. At the age of 12, James had been declared of age, which is rather odd because normally it's a bit higher than that, and he supposedly rendered a governor unnecessary. The lords, pledging allegiance to him at Edinburgh Castle in May 1524, acknowledged this status. However, an agreement was reached that he would still be under the guardianship of a council of lords. He would reside with each group for 3 months, rotating among them. Upon the completion of the Earl of Angus's turn, he refused to relinquish control of the king. For the next 4 years, James found himself under Angus's control. The king harboured an enduring resentment towards Angus and the Douglases for the humiliation he endured during this period. The repercussions of James's anger were evident in widespread property confiscations and the shocking act of burning Angus's sister Janet, Lady Glamis. Finally, in 1528, James successfully liberated himself from Angus's grasp, taking governance into his own hands at the tender age of 16. As king, his objectives included reinforcing royal authority, stabilising his finances, establishing law and order in the borders, highlands, and islands, and securing a prominent position for his kingdom on the European stage. Despite encountering resistance from lords opposed to centralised authority and lacking the personal charm of his father, James IV, or his daughter, Mary Queen of Scots, James persevered in achieving many of his goals. In 1529 and 1530, James led significant expeditions in the borders to capture and punish notorious leaders, including Johnny Armstrong, who, despite being celebrated as a folk hero, was, in reality, a criminal involved in theft, murder, and extortion.
You are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
Subsequently, James shifted his focus to the west, addressing concerns about his lieutenant, the Earl of Arran. By reaching an understanding with Alexander of Islay, James retaliated against Henry VIII's continued support of Angus and his brother by backing Irish rebels, turning the tables on the English monarch. In 1536, James achieved a remarkable level of tranquility in Scotland, a state not experienced since his father's reign. Seeking a royal consort, he embarked on a journey to France. There, he married Madeleine, the daughter of Francois I of France, and the newlywed couple returned to Scotland in May 1537. Unfortunately, the Queen passed away within a few months, compelling James to seek a new wife and Queen to secure an heir. His second marriage was to Marie de Guise, a member of the ducal house of Lorraine. Queen Marie bore 3 children, but the first 2, both boys, tragically died within days of each other in 1541. In 1541, war erupted between Scotland and England when the Duke of Norfolk led a substantial force intending to conduct a swift border raid. The Earl of Huntly decisively defeated Norfolk at Haddon Rig. However, despite this victory, James's lords refrained from launching a full-scale attack on England. A less ambitious raid was planned for the western borders, and James, mindful of his father's fatal encounter in battle and his own illness, opted not to participate. Unfortunately, the raid turned disastrous as Scottish troops were routed at Solway Moss on the 24th of November 1542, resulting in the capture of 1,200 prisoners. James returned to Falkland Palace, but his health took a severe downturn, and he passed away on the 14th of December at the age of 30. Some stories say he died of a broken heart. However, these stories don't take into account his symptoms which indicated he had dysentery. Broken heart, dysentery, same thing. James's heir was his 6-day-old daughter Mary, who became queen upon his death. A later story claims that James's last words were, "It came with a lass, and it will go with a lass." But there is no contemporary evidence to support this. Sorry. Prince James, Duke of Rothesay. Born on the 22nd of May 1540, James, Duke of Rothesay, was the first son and one of 3 children born to King James V of Scotland and his second wife, Marie of Guise. From the very instant of his birth, James held the position of the heir apparent to the Scottish throne. The infant prince underwent an opulent baptism ceremony in St Andrews on the 26th of May. His godparents included Dowager Queen Margaret Tudor, his paternal grandmother, Cardinal David Beaton, Archbishop of St Andrews, and Gavin Dunbar, the Archbishop of Glasgow. The torches at the baptism were held using 15 ells of white Genovese taffeta? Genovese? No. Really? Genoese. The torches at the baptism were held using 15 ells of white Genoese taffeta. A French craftsman, Andrew Manissuin, oh my god, what is it with the pronunciation today, crafted a cradle for the child and a canopy for his state bed was provided. Nobility members were summoned to attend, coats of arms were adorned, and some of the king's silver plate was dispatched from Edinburgh for the occasion. James V ensured that Henry VIII of England and Francis I of France were notified of the birth through messengers. The festivities for the baptism might have included a display of fireworks, as indicated by the royal accounts for June 1540. They reveal that 2 French royal gunners were paid for making firework shot to visit be the King's grace. In January 1541, a record of payments for livery clothes to household servants included 2 individuals serving Lady Jean Stewart, the half-sister of the prince. The young royal had the assistance of 4 ladies to attend to his cradle, and a designated master cook. Jean Sinclair served as his nurse. Tragically, James passed away at St Andrews on the 21st of April 1541, not having reached his first birthday. His final resting place was in Holyrood Abbey. Remarkably, his younger brother, Robert, Duke of Albany, also succumbed to death the day before, at a mere 9 days old. Charles Stewart, Earl of Lennox. Born in the spring of 1557, Charles Stewart was the second surviving son of Matthew Stewart, Earl of Lennox, and Lady Margaret Douglas, the daughter of the Dowager Queen of Scotland, Margaret Tudor, and her second husband. Through his parents, he had claims to both the Scottish and English thrones. Through his mother and grandmother, Charles had a claim to the English throne. Charles had an older brother, Henry Stewart Lord Darnley, who would become the husband of Mary Queen of Scots, and father of the future King James I and VI. So, through his brother, Charles was the uncle to the future King of England and Scotland. Charles would see his nephew become King of Scotland, but would not survive to see him claim the English throne. In 1574, Margaret Douglas visited Elizabeth Cavendish, the daughter of Bess of Hardwicke. Margaret and Bess had arranged for the union of their children, Elizabeth and Charles, despite Elizabeth I's disapproval, which is why the union was done secretly. Queen Elizabeth had originally suspected that Lady Douglas had requested to take her, at this point, surviving son, to Scotland to visit Mary Queen of Scots. It was on their trip up north that they stayed with Bess of Hardwicke, and it would be here that Charles would meet and potentially fall in love with Bess's daughter, Elizabeth Cavendish. When the Queen had learnt of the secret union that had taken place, she was understandably furious.
You deliberately disobeyed me.
She ordered Lady Douglas and Bess of Hardwicke to come to London. Margaret was put under house arrest in Hackney before she was sent to the Tower for the 3rd time. Some sources have claimed that Bess was sent with her. Others say that there is no contemporary evidence for this. So, it seems that Bess and her daughter Elizabeth were placed under house arrest at Rufford in Nottinghamshire until investigations had been undertaken. You would think that the situation couldn't get any worse. Well, it did, because Elizabeth Cavendish was already pregnant with Charles's baby. A baby that would have a claim to Queen Elizabeth's throne. In the autumn of 1575, Margaret Douglas was released from her imprisonment, and she went to go live with her son Charles, her daughter-in-law Elizabeth, and her new granddaughter, who had been named Arabella. In April 1576, Charles Stewart, Earl of Lennox, died. His only child, Arabella, a girl. She should have inherited the title of Lennox. However, the earldom of Lennox was a Scottish title, and as an English woman, Arabella could not inherit the title. Arabella's mother, Elizabeth Cavendish, died on the 21st of January, 1582, and as such, Charles's daughter Arabella went to go live with her maternal grandmother, Bess of Hardwicke. Henry Stewart, Lord Darnley. Henry Stewart, Lord Darnley, was born on the 7th of December 1545, the older brother of Charles Stewart, Earl of Lennox, and he was the second child and the first surviving son of Matthew Stewart, Earl of Lennox, and his wife, Lady Margaret Douglas. Through his parents, he had claims to both the Scottish and English thrones. His father, Matthew Stewart, Earl of Lennox, was the son of John Stewart, Earl of Lennox, who traced his lineage back to James II, King of Scots. His mother, Lady Margaret Douglas, was the daughter of Margaret Tudor, who was the daughter of King Henry VII of England. Lord Darnley, in his youth, received a commendable education, acquiring proficiency in Latin and gaining familiarity with the Scots, English, and French languages. His talents extended beyond academics, excelling in singing, playing the lute, and dancing. Additionally, he demonstrated physical strength and athleticism, proving himself as a skilled horseman with expertise in weaponry. Lord Darnley also harboured a passion for hunting and hawking. Darnley wrote a letter in March 1554 mentioning a drama or map he had made, the Utopia Nova, in which he wished every hair in my head for to be a worthy soldier. Darnley had been approached about the idea of marrying his cousin, Mary Queen of Scots. I think he liked the idea of being the King of Scotland. Funny that, in February 1565, he left London for a visit to Scotland, arriving in Edinburgh, and he presented himself to the Queen of Scots. James Melville reported that Mary was impressed by her handsome cousin. Her Majesty took well with him, and said that he was the lustiest and best proportioned long man that she had seen. Henry would go with Mary to Holyrood on the 24th of February, and the two were always in each other's company. Darnley caught measles, and Mary nursed him back to health. The two grew close, and they wed on the 29th of July, 1568. Upon learning the news, the infuriated Queen Elizabeth I of England, who had explicitly prohibited their marriage, imprisoned Darnley's mother, Lady Margaret, in the Tower of London. Mary's union with Henry Stewart turned out to be disastrous. Darnley, characterised by arrogance, disillusionness and self-interest, and a penchant for alcohol, quickly proved to be a regrettable choice for Mary. Mary eventually viewed her imprudent husband as a source of embarrassment, often preferring the company of her favoured Italian musician, David Rizzio. Whispers circulated throughout the Scottish court, alleging an illicit relationship between Rizzio and the Queen. Fuelled by jealousy, Darnley, accompanied by Lord Ruthven and other Scottish lords in armour, stormed into the Queen's chambers. In a brutal attack, Rizzio was mercilessly stabbed while desperately clinging to the Queen's skirts for protection. This incident occurred while Mary was heavily pregnant. Unforgiving of her husband's outrageous act, Mary developed an intense loathing towards him. In June 1566, within the confines of Edinburgh Castle, a son emerged from this tumultuous union, bestowed with the names James Charles, destined to become King James I and VI. Darnley, displaying a cold demeanour, cynically questioned the legitimacy of his own son, intensifying the Queen's bitterness towards her spouse. Despite being rumoured to secretly feel disheartened by the birth, Elizabeth I played the role of godmother by proxy during the Scottish prince's baptism. During the night of the 10th of February 1566, Darnley was recovering from syphilis at a residence near Edinburgh known as Kirkhofield. this is where he would meet his tragic end. The dwelling was rocked by a powerful explosion caused by gunpowder, resulting in the demise of Darnley and a servant, whose lifeless bodies were discovered on the premises.
Go. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
The subsequent investigation traced the explosion of 2 barrels of gunpowder strategically placed beneath Darnley's sleeping quarters. His body, along with that of his valet William Taylor, was found outdoors, surrounded by a cloak, a dagger, a chair, and a coat. Notably, Darnley, attired solely in his nightshirt, appeared to have hastily fled his bedchamber. Upon closer inspection, the bodies displayed no injuries associated with the explosion, suggesting that the blast itself did not directly cause Darnley's demise. It was determined that the deaths of the 2 men resulted from strangulation, believed to have occurred subsequent to the explosion. Many pointed fingers at James Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell, as the likely perpetrator, raising suspicions about the Queen's involvement in her husband's murder. The skull of Darnley, marked with indications of syphilis, is currently held by the College of Surgeons in Edinburgh. Swiftly, suspicion centred on the Earl of Bothwell and his backers. Bothwell had long been suspected of harbouring ambitions for the throne, and his close association with the Queen fuelled rumours of an intimate relationship between them. This perceived connection was seen as a potential motive for Bothwell to orchestrate Darnley's murder, possibly with assistance from certain nobles, and seemingly with the approval of the Queen. Mary had been exploring avenues to address the issue of Darnley, considering divorce among her options, none of which proved viable. Darnley's shocked and grieving father, Matthew Stewart, Earl of Lennox, angrily demanded an inquiry into his son's murder. The Queen complied, and Bothwell was declared innocent of any involvement in Darnley's death. There were many, including Lennox himself, who were sceptical of this verdict and saw it as a little more than a whitewash. Thank you for listening to part 2 of this series. Join me next time as I will explore the male princes who descend from King Henry VII's youngest daughter, Mary Tudor, Queen of France. More specifically, through Mary's eldest daughter, Frances. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure that notification bell is on so you never miss a video. And if you really enjoyed this video, then why not give a super thanks? But anyway guys, until the next one, have a wonderful day.